Okay, students, so now that you have your printed image source material printed out in good quality and you have the grid on it, you want to make the grid on your large drawing pad. And so to do that, I'm going to recommend doing this assignment in graphite. I think that's the smarter choice. So you'll want a sharp pencil, and the trick to making this grid is make it as light as possible. You're the only person that needs to see it, and if anything, even after you draw it, you may want to erase it a little bit so that it's really, really invisible. That being said, I'm probably going to draw it a little bit darker, only so you can see it on camera. So your grid is quite figured out. You're going to need 9 columns and 12 rows. And that's very simple. If you take a ruler, all you have to do is lay it along the top half of the paper to make a really nice square grid and mark every 2 inches with your pencil. Now go ahead and come down to the bottom and do the same. And then you simply connect the dots. Now again, I'm going to drag my pencil really lightly because I want these lines to be incredibly light. Okay, I think you can see that in camera. However, I would probably want them even lighter still. In real life, in person, these lines only need to be visible by you, so make them as light as possible. Okay, so I'd go ahead and finish this up. Okay, now that you have your columns done, you want to go ahead and make your rows. Same idea, start at the very edge of the paper, work along the edge, and mark every 2 inches. Okay, so now I have my grid, and it's perfectly measured out, and the squares are all absolutely square. Really important thing to remember, that they all need to be really square. The grid doesn't work otherwise. The next thing I would do, probably before I even started my next step, is take my eraser and just carefully sort of lighten a lot of these lines up, particularly ones you know are going to end up being in the face, because those lines are really hard to get rid of once you start shading. So it's easier to get rid of them now and then just use the ghost lines that are sort of left behind as your guide. So the temptation now, I think with most students, is you have this grid on your reference photo, and you'd probably want to just use this grid to start tracing a contour. You know, oh, his hair starts up here, and you start drawing here, and curls are here, and there's an eye here. And so you start drawing these aspects of the face in contour lines with the intention of coming back and sort of coloring them in with values. And my experience is that is probably the, well, not the worst way, but it almost never works well. And instead, I'm going to show you a better way. So what you're going to want to do is make what's referred to as a viewing window. And what this does is it limits the amount of information that you see to 1 square at a time. This way, I can address this square up here to its completion using just this 1 square. Once that one is done, I move over here and do the same. What this kind of does is it tricks your brain. So rather than looking at the face and sort of making these assumptions, like most people do, of what an eye is supposed to look like and how a mouth is supposed to be drawn, you're really forced to only look at the values that are happening. Very specific shapes and very specific values. It makes you kind of forget that you're drawing a face, and instead, you're just drawing the information in each individual square. This works so much better. So, to make a viewing window, get this out of the way, you'll need a piece of just plain copy paper, or any kind of paper would be fine. It doesn't really matter. Take a ruler and measure your particular squares. Not all of them are going to be the same. Mine happen to be 1-inch squares, but yours are going to probably be smaller. I'm going to go ahead and measure it in millimeters. So mine happen to be here we go. I'll do this one right here. Perfect. It looks like 25 and a half millimeters. So we'll say 26 millimeters. That'll work perfect. So what I do for this is I go ahead and go down the page a certain amount. I start and I measure along this side, 10 centimeters. And then I'm going to go ahead and do 26 millimeters, 10, 20. So actually 2.6 centimeters. Okay, same thing down this side. I'm going to measure down a amount, like 10, and then I'm going to do the other measurement that I did, 2, 5, 26. Okay, and then I'm going to connect those across the page like so. What this does is by measuring down from this piece of paper on both sides the same exact way, I won't get any weird parallax or any kind of like angular lines. Everything will remain nice and perfectly square. I know sometimes it seems like this setup takes a bit of time, but really this will take you like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. So I have that little strip this way, and then I would do the same thing going down here. I'd maybe measure it down, I don't know, 9, make a mark, and then do 26. And then over here, measure down 9, and then 20, so 9 centimeters, and then 26 millimeters. And where those two things intersect, bam, you have a nice perfect square. And so there's my square, and at this point I just use a small breakaway utility knife to carefully cut this square away. And then I can begin. Now, the last little tip I'm going to give you is that the assignment is best done, as I said, 1 square at a time. I would use graphite pencils, and the idea is to focus just on the 1 square, building up your hatches and your marks in such a way, sort of similar to what you did with the paper bag, just a slow sort of buildup of hatches until you can match all the values that you see in this square. If you like, one thing that you can do, start at square 1 up here, and then go to the corresponding square on your drawing pad. And once this square is completely finished and you're done drawing it, you could feasibly put an X through this, and that will help you remember not to accidentally do it a second time. Go over here to square 2, finish it. Go to square 3, finish it. This will take a while. It takes a long time. However, it's a really, really good drawing. If you take your time on it, the results can be excellent, and you can get really good faces. It's a great way to study the sort of subtle sort of shading that happens on a face, and allows you to be able to do it better when you draw it from life or in other circumstances. And just for fun, I'm going to throw up an image of one that was done by a student last semester, so you can see what the end result can look like.